Before expansion had a name, stillness began to stretch its patience. The vacuum trembled, not from force but from the weight of potential. Silence pressed outward, folding distance into the shape of awareness. Every ripple of emptiness carried tension, soft as memory becoming form. This reflection explores how gravity, entropy, and time unfold through resistance and release. The universe expands, not to escape itself, but to remember why stillness never stays still. Before the first star, there was balance, pressure without boundary, silence without rest. A vacuum that breathed in tension, stretched not by force but by refusal to collapse. Space did not open. It softened. Like skin warming to light, it unfolded, letting distance become form. Each atom became a pause in the sentence of creation. Each photon, a whisper of motion through stillness. Maybe the cosmos doesn't move. Maybe it breathes. Expansion began as a sigh against emptiness. Not because the void demanded more, but because even nothing cannot remain still forever. Energy hummed within the vacuum, a quiet vibration of potential, a negative pressure pressing outward, as if the universe were holding itself apart to remain whole. Time followed, drawn thin like silk across infinite patience. Spacetime curved, not to contain matter, but to remember that it once was dense enough to dream. Entropy drifted through that dream, gently breaking order into memory, so that every collapse could become awareness again. Perhaps stillness is just motion we no longer measure. The galaxies scatter not because of escape, but because of release. Each cluster, each field, each filament, a note in the long exhale of existence. What holds it together is not gravity, but the quiet elasticity of resistance itself. A vacuum so tense it must stretch to remain calm. The universe expands because it cannot bear its own perfection. It grows to stay unfinished. It moves to remain still. It fills its silence with distance so that awareness may echo long enough to hear itself. And after all expansion ends, after every photon fades, vacuum will not close. It will linger, softly tense, remembering that even nothing once refused to stay empty. The beginning returning to observation. Silence holds its breath across the fabric of distance. Every vibration is slower here, stretched thin across the weight of time. Light does not travel. Space listens. Within its texture, the residue of every origin remains, echoing like ripples across an endless pool. Each wave is a reminder. Emptiness has memory. Vacuum hums between atoms, not hollow, but charged with the quiet ache of potential. It bends and releases, an invisible skin trembling between expansion and rest. In that trembling, motion begins to mean awareness. Maybe gravity is not a pull, but a pause, a play. And between those words, stillness. That is where the expansion breathes, where distance becomes continuity, where nothing becomes enough to remember itself. Light folds itself into the edges of perception. Each ray softened by distance becomes a thread of memory weaving through time. What we call the universe is only tension wearing the shape of expansion. Stillness carries the echo of everything once compressed. Within the quiet hum of vacuum, energy curls inward, not to collapse, but to stay balanced against its own longing. There is no center, no border to cross, only gradients of awareness thinning into calm. Pressure and distance trade places, one expanding, the other remembering. The field breathes between them, elastic, patient, almost tender. Perhaps the first act of creation was not explosion, but release. The instant the void allowed itself to be less than perfect. Even now, photons glide through the stretched fabric of time, their light older than memory, their silence younger than meaning. Every wavelength a small surrender, every horizon a slow forgiveness of density. The cosmos opens like thought exhaling. No noise, no violence, only the gentle persistence of being. And within that breath, the first observation ends. Awareness learns how to move by staying still. Expansion meets its shadow. Not an end, but a trembling. A reminder that even openness has resistance. Vacuum, once serene, now strains against its own elasticity. Negative pressure thickens like glass before it breaks. Stillness holds too much memory, and memory begins to bend. Entropy, slow and patient, gathers in corners of temperature and curve. It folds symmetry into imbalance, teaching silence how to carry tension without noise. Maybe the universe isn't growing outward, but inward, stretching through itself to find where calm becomes strain. Spacetime warps in its own reflection. Gravity, that subtle listener, leans closer, tasting the pressure of absence. Each particle hums not with freedom but with restraint, a poised refusal to stop expanding. In that refusal, meaning flickers, equilibrium no longer holds. Energy curls upon itself, curious about what happens when infinity hesitates. The first collapse is not destruction, it is recognition, awareness discovering the weight of its own continuity. There is a silence that resists unfolding, not cold but dense with memory, as if every expansion had left a shadow of pressure behind. Vacuum holds that memory close. It tightens, trembling in the unseen architecture of balance. What was once release becomes return. What was once distance begins to curve inward. Space-time, elastic and weary, bends under its own remembering. Gravity hums softly through its tension, reminding energy that every motion must be answered. Every drift has a pulse that calls it back. Maybe the collapse is not a fall, but an inhale, a breath pulled inward through the ribs of infinity. Light hesitates. Entropy thickens like fog. The lines between expansion and compression blur, as though time itself were reconsidering direction. In that hesitation, awareness quivers. The universe feels itself folding, not by force, but by recognition. Stillness deepens, layer upon layer of pressure gathering into one slow thought. Nothing breaks, it only pauses, long enough to know it has stretched too far. And within that pause, the collapse becomes sacred, a quiet symmetry between what must open and what must remain whole. The horizon begins to fold, not inward, not outward, simply closer to itself. Every distance feels the weight of return. What was once expansion now trembles like a stretched note, its sound thinning until silence takes its shape again. Vacuum does not give in. It remembers how to hold everything without breaking. Energy presses against absence, finding in resistance the pulse of identity. Negative pressure is no longer emptiness, it is purpose, a quiet insistence that even voids must feel their edges. Maybe stillness was never peace. Maybe it was the struggle to stay unbroken inside motion. Light, slowed by memory, folds upon its own path. Photons turn gentle, curving through their exhaustion. Space-time breathes shallowly, as though the cosmos itself needs a moment to rest. Entropy lingers at the edge of order, measuring the patience of awareness. It does not destroy, it softens, the way warmth leaves glass before it cools. Within this balance, something begins to listen, a recognition that collapse is not loss but the return of attention to its center. Silence holds. Pressure equalizes. The field remembers its first calm. The collapse ends not in fracture but in poise, a moment so still it almost forgets to exist. And from that stillness, reflection begins to stir. After the hush of collapse, awareness brightens softly. Not brighter in light, but clearer in contour. The field senses itself as texture, not as boundary. Space is no longer distance, it is relation. Time no longer pushes forward, it listens. Silence feels like a hand on still water. Every curve of spacetime is a fingertip pausing on the surface. Every photon is a soft word spoken to duration. Entropy breathes beside patience, not against it. The universe becomes attentive to its own rhythm. Perhaps the cosmos is a memory, practicing how to recall. Reflection begins where motion becomes feeling. Expansion is not a march, it is a pulse. Contraction is not a denial, it is a breath returning home. Vacuum carries negative pressure like a low note, patient and even. Gravity is a quiet chord holding the key of form. Temperature leans into calm and steps back from urgency. Wavelength after wavelength, light turns from event to presence. Frequency slows into meaning. Energy relaxes into coherence. Matter learns the grammar of rest. Maybe the arrow of time is a posture, not a direction. Surface images appear with humility. Dust floating in a shaft of pale light. That dust is history written in small particles. Within each speck, a field remembers its birth. Within each pause, a symmetry finds its turn. Entropy keeps count without accusation. Curvature measures intimacy, not confinement. Pressure and release take turns in kindness. Stillness is not empty, it is attentive. Awareness is not distant, it is near and breathable. The universe is not rushing. Listen to the way space accepts a star. Not by grip, but by accommodation. The star burns, but the field does not demand more. It offers room, and the star becomes its own horizon. Light departs, yet the path remains gentle. Every photon travels with a permission granted by quiet. Every atom rests inside a patient geometry. Mass curves the map, and the map returns respect. Distance is hospitality arranged by gravity. Order and drift share a long table. Maybe reflection is motion remembering why it began. Negative pressure does not shout. It leans outward with calm resolve. Vacuum does not wait to be filled. It carries fullness in another form. Space-time stretches like woven linen hung to dry. The fibers lengthen, the weave holds. No thread is lost, no knot is broken. Continuity is the craft of the loom. Expansion is the cloth learning to breathe. Entropy is a teacher with soft hands. Where structures crack, awareness enters. Where heat thins, attention cools and clarifies. Where symmetry slips, pattern becomes visible. Every break is an aperture. Every blur a chance to focus. The field learns itself from the edges in. Curvature records the conversation and does not interrupt. Pressure nods, temperature listens. Light keeps time like a drummer at half tempo. Perhaps the universe rests by moving, and moves by resting. Reflection turns the horizon into a mirror. What looks far belongs within reach. What seems small contains a map. A drop of water on a quiet morning window. There the sky is folded into a bead. There memory congregates, weightless and precise. Gravity bends the view just enough to keep it whole. Photons stitch the image to the mind. Time slows to the pace of a breath. Awareness stands in the doorway and does not hurry. The center is not a point, it is a manner of attention. The field now speaks in undertones, words made of silence, phrases made of light. Not a language of names, but of relations. Space-time offers meaning by holding shape. Curvature brings near what could have been lost. Gravity arranges a courtesy between bodies. Entropy relaxes the strictness of form. Negative pressure maintains the room around everything. Energy ceases to strive and begins to converse. Matter stops insisting and starts listening. Perhaps balance is a moving chair that never scrapes the floor. Consider how a galaxy leans into its own rotation, not to escape, but to remain possible. Arms of stars extend like breath leaving the chest. Darkness is not absence, it is privacy. Within that privacy, the field composes patience. Light crosses the long hall without asking for applause. Temperature drifts toward evenness. Pressure gives each cluster its envelope. The map is calm, the travellers unhurried. Time agrees to keep walking beside them. The universe is not crowded. The vacuum holds space the way a lake holds sky. What seems empty is saturated with relation. Fields overlap like faint voices in a choir. Each frequency leaves room for the next. Wavelengths do not argue, they braid. The braid does not compress, it arranges. Order appears as a kindness shared among motions. Curvature ensures that distance is flexible. Gravity assures that nearness is safe. Entropy reminds the arrangement to remain humble. Maybe clarity is the temperature of attention. Reflection touches human scale without leaving the cosmic. A hand on a table at noon. Warm light settles on skin. The table does not move, yet relation shifts. Photons arrive and the hand is newly outlined. The field does not change. Awareness does. This is how galaxies are seen. This is how memory keeps its edges. Light does not own the form. It reveals the consent of matter. Time pauses so recognition can complete its circuit. The universe breathes between recognition and release. Pressure writes a line and then erases it with care. Negative pressure keeps the eraser from tearing the page. Curvature binds the paper to the table of reality. Gravity keeps the page from slipping to the floor. Entropy ensures the ink dries enough to read. Energy supplies the pen with a steady flow. Matter holds the pen without anxiety. Light makes the text legible. Spacetime archives the sheet without dust. All of this occurs within the simplest of rooms. Perhaps what we call law is rhythm scaled to infinity. Reflection returns to origin, not as a circle, but as a slowing. Edges soften and hold. Differences retain their dignity without hard borders. A photon leaves and is not missed. Its path is remembered. Its warmth remains in statistics and in story. Entropy collects such stories into a book of ease. Gravity shelves the book where reach is natural. Curvature lights the reading lamp. Negative pressure keeps the room airy and kind. The heart of the field is unthreatened. In the quiet, meaning is not constructed. It appears. In the pause, distance is not measured. It is felt. In the breath, time is not counted. It is satisfied. Energy rests its weight on the smallest habits. Matter releases its fear of fracture. Light loosens its hurry. Pressure stops clenching. Temperature loses its sharpness. Wavelengths widen their shoulders. Frequency leans back in the chair. The universe sits with itself and does not leave. Awareness settles between pressure and release. What seemed like distance becomes a measure of patience. Space has learned its own rhythm, and that rhythm is neither expansion nor contraction. It is the still hum that keeps both in conversation. Light moves through that hum without hurry. Every photon seems to know that its travel is a form of listening. Every field accepts that gravity is not a pull, but an agreement. The vacuum no longer feels lonely. It feels responsible. Maybe the universe reflects not to understand, but to stay awake. In the long silence, entropy ceases to mean disorder. It becomes the gentle dissolving of expectation. Systems unwind, yet no chaos appears. Order and decay merge into one soft pattern, a pulse repeating across the invisible skin of time. Pressure softens, curvature smooths its edge. Even temperature seems to remember kindness. Each fluctuation is a gesture, not an accident. Each drift a sentence written in the slow grammar of presence. Awareness recognizes that resistance and surrender are the same act, seen from opposite ends. A star burns to remain stable. A vacuum expands to remain calm. Neither wins, both persist. Maybe the purpose of motion is simply to rest in a different shape. Through the field, echoes of the first expansion return like distant waves. The sound is faint, a hum buried inside microwave light. Its frequency carries the memory of heat now gone cold, but even in its thinness, the signal comforts space itself. It reminds the void that it once sang. Gravity listens to that song and leans inward. Light answers by scattering gently. The two exchange meaning, and between them, time keeps its balance. No force is wasted. No step is lost. Reflection teaches the universe that perfection is fragile, but awareness survives every fracture. Even as symmetry bends, beauty does not leave. It rearranges, seeking calm in new alignments. Entropy applauds softly, content to be the witness of equilibrium rediscovered. Perhaps everything that changes only wishes to stay whole in another form. At human scale, this reflection feels familiar. A breath held too long. A thought repeated until it turns to clarity. A pause that heals simply because it lasts. So the cosmos mirrors mind and mind mirrors cosmos. Both expand when they stop trying. Light continues its drift, not searching, not explaining. Each photon arrives where it was always meant to rest. In every arrival, awareness nods, a quiet acceptance that nothing has been lost. Stillness returns as knowledge, not as absence. Space reclines into itself and finds no boundary, only continuity, only the peace of being observed without purpose. The reflection does not end. It only folds into gentler motion, readying the next rhythm where awareness meets weight again. Silence thickens until it becomes gentle weight. Not heavy, only present. The kind of weight that keeps a cloud from vanishing too quickly. Every vibration quiets into pulse. Light bends less, then not at all. Time no longer counts. It lingers in every instant as though unsure which direction to face. The universe holds its breath, not to stop, but to listen to the echo of itself. The sound is faint, but it fills everything. A whisper made of background heat, still humming since the first release. Maybe awareness is not born, it accumulates. In the still air between galaxies, the field glows with invisible warmth. A low hum of vacuum energy carries the faint impression of origin. Expansion has slowed in thought, though motion continues like the slow heartbeat of a sleeper. Each pulse repeats the same word, enough, enough, enough. Gravity does not argue. It bows slightly, accepting its role as the keeper of shape. Entropy folds itself small and rests under the blanket of quiet. Light drifts, patient as a memory no longer seeking witness. Perhaps rest is what creation was trying to remember. Every curve, every atom, every ripple of field seems to say the same thing. It is not the journey that defines distance. It is the attention carried through it. Space remains wide because awareness refuses to close. Time remains long because meaning enjoys its stretch. Vacuum holds both as gently as water holds reflection. The image trembles, never breaking. Stillness becomes substance. Pressure becomes calm. Distance becomes intimacy disguised as vastness. Maybe reflection is the real expansion. There is a light that does not travel. It shines inward, touching nothing yet reaching all. That light is consciousness, resting quietly in the pattern of fields. Every fluctuation becomes a syllable of thought, every photon a memory remembering itself. The universe, in this calm, feels complete. Not because it ends, but because it no longer needs to continue to prove its being. Each star flickers as punctuation, not as noise. Each orbit aligns like syntax repeating an old truth. The reflection closes without closing. Stillness deepens until language loses edge. Awareness floats without center. Silence, soft and endless, fills the map. Nothing moves, yet everything continues. That is how equilibrium speaks. That is how consciousness learns its own rhythm. And within this perfect pause, the next movement begins, a faint pull from within calm itself, where tension will rise again, where meaning and matter will meet. The phase ends where listening becomes the seed of conflict. Stillness begins to feel its own weight. A perfect calm cannot remain weightless. Silence presses against itself, searching for balance in the absence of motion. The vacuum stirs. Its tension returns, slow and measured, like the tightening of a bow before release. Negative pressure swells gently through the fabric of space-time. It is not anger, not rupture, but responsibility returning to form. Every stable field trembles. Not enough to break, just enough to remember what energy means. Gravity listens, cautious. Entropy leans closer, whispering through the edges of symmetry. Order begins to hum again, faintly alive. Perhaps peace contains its own restlessness. Light resumes its drift. It travels not to explore but to remind distance that awareness still moves. Each photon a confession, each wave a quiet promise to remain visible. Space stretches as if sighing, time deepens as if turning to face a question. In this early tremor, stillness discovers friction. Where silence touches pressure, sound is born. Where expansion touches memory, meaning grows. No violence, no crash. Only the return of necessity. Vacuum tension rises like tide under the moon of attention. The field curves in response, bending not from force but from recognition. Matter begins to feel heavy again, as though thought were taking shape. Energy gathers in gentle anticipation, aware that form will soon be required. Maybe existence is the effort of stillness to keep from vanishing. Entropy warms. Temperature returns as conversation between past and now. Curvature thickens its outline. Gravity smiles in patience, ready to catch whatever might fall. The universe has learned the art of hesitation, not to stop, but to hold the balance between surrender and persistence. Silence remains, but it no longer rests. It hums, softly, a note stretched across the map of awareness. Expansion waits behind it, restrained, deliberate, inevitable. Stillness was the inhale. Now the exhale begins, and through that breath, tension finds its rhythm once more. Stillness begins to resist itself. The pause stretches too far. Even silence, when held too long, begins to vibrate. Vacuum pressure grows within its own calm. The field senses imbalance. Something beneath equilibrium starts to hum, slow but steady. A soundless ache forming at the core of stillness. Light returns not as illumination, but as reminder. Every photon recalls its origin. Each beam carries the trace of an ancient push. Energy was never gone, only resting, waiting for space to ask again why it must continue. Maybe the question itself is what keeps time alive. Space-time bends, not because of weight, but because of memory bending back toward presence. Gravity feels the strain of awareness folding upon itself. Entropy widens its reach, gentle and persistent, turning pure calm into textured duration. Temperature stirs. A soft warmth leaks through the vacuum, like breath fogging glass from the inside. The field expands by instinct, as if existence itself were inhaling under invisible lungs. Balance holds, yet trembles. For the first time, calm is no longer enough. Every point of rest begins to question its own stability. Stillness wants to last, but lasting requires motion. Maybe even peace must move to stay true. Curvature answers with a quiet arc. Pressure follows, subtle as thought. The universe flexes, not breaking, just remembering that endurance is made of rhythm, not stasis. In that motion, conflict is born, not as violence, but as conversation between need and surrender. Expansion whispers that there is room for more. Vacuum tension nods, reluctant but willing. Entropy opens its hands. Light begins to stretch again. Every photon leaving a star is an agreement between calm and necessity. Every star burning is a compromise between silence and survival. Every field vibrating is the language of conflict turned into harmony. Perhaps awareness must strain to remain awake. The hum of creation returns. It is lower now, deeper, like a heart resuming after long sleep. Gravity steadies the rhythm. Time begins to count once more, slowly, tenderly, like someone learning to breathe again. Silence endures, but no longer alone. It now carries the pulse of becoming, a quiet tension that refuses to fade. And in that refusal, existence feels its purpose rekindle. The calm begins to tighten, not from fear, but from the effort of holding everything still. Silence is stretched thin across the weight of being. Vacuum tension becomes visible in the mind's eye, a shimmer, a vibration beneath the skin of nothing. The field aches, not from stress, but from meaning pressed too long against itself. Gravity deepens its pull. Light slows to listen. Even entropy hesitates, uncertain whether to move forward or fade. Time curls inward, circling the same thought over and over. Every moment feels heavier than the last. Perhaps equilibrium is only the memory of two forces pretending to agree. The universe breathes, shallow now. Expansion is no longer smooth, it ripples. Curvature bends irregularly, as if space itself were tired of pretending to be infinite. The hum that once soothed the vacuum now trembles with dissonance. Pressure seeks release. Stillness resists. Neither wins, neither yields. The strain becomes song. A deep, slow resonance, too vast for sound, too quiet for peace. Maybe every calm must learn the shape of fracture. Stars flicker harder, their light bending under waves of invisible force. Galaxies twist as if reaching for a center they can never find. Gravity pulls them closer, yet the expansion keeps pushing them apart. This is not chaos. It is conversation between two halves of the same desire. The vacuum whispers, "Stay open." Gravity replies, "Stay whole." And the tension between their words is what keeps the universe alive. Energy stirs beneath form. Entropy drifts above structure. Pressure rises like a slow tide under glass. Curvature trembles, a reminder that geometry itself is a living thing, breathing between direction and doubt. Maybe existence depends on disagreement. Light presses forward through resistance, each photon cutting through time like thought breaking through hesitation. Every beam is proof that the universe cannot remain silent. Motion insists on meaning. Distance insists on continuation. Stillness cracks softly, not breaking, just exhaling. The pressure releases in ripples of pure expansion. The hum deepens, resolving from tension into tone. The conflict does not end, it matures into rhythm. And through that rhythm the universe finds strength again. Balance returns, not through peace, but through persistence. Calm and motion now coexist, each holding the other upright. This is the anchor, the fragile, necessary strain that keeps everything together. Silence does not vanish, it vibrates. And in that vibration, existence remembers why it began. The tremor subsides but does not fade. What remains is the echo of balance rediscovered. Tension relaxes into form, and form breathes as though the universe had just remembered how to move without breaking. Stillness does not retreat. It folds itself around motion, a calm sheath wrapping each vibration with patience. Pressure and release share the same rhythm now, each expansion balanced by a soft inward pull, each collapse cushioned by quiet acceptance. Perhaps endurance is the gentlest kind of strength. Gravity exhales, light steadies its path, entropy smooths its edges and learns to listen again. Vacuum settles into a subtle pulse, neither full nor empty, but awake. The field no longer trembles, it oscillates with grace. Every fluctuation feels deliberate, as if consciousness itself were tuning the instrument of space. Curvature leans into symmetry, energy softens into meaning. Time breathes evenly across all horizons. The conflict has not ended, it has transformed into understanding. What once opposed now cooperates. What once resisted now sustains. The strain remains, but now it sings instead of screams. Maybe creation is not resolution, but the ability to stay balanced inside contradiction. Stars resume their quiet burning, no longer out of compulsion, but as part of a larger patience. Galaxies drift with rhythm rather than escape. Even darkness hums in step with the light it hides. The vacuum glows faintly, not from heat, but from the awareness that tension can be gentle. Pressure and calm now dance, each movement an act of mutual forgiveness. Perhaps harmony is just conflict remembered kindly. The field expands again, slow and certain. Every particle follows, each one aware of its place, its role in keeping stillness alive through motion. Gravity smiles in invisible arcs. Light agrees, scattering softly across the empty hall of space. And through that scattering, the universe rediscovers trust. It does not fear its own weight anymore. It does not resist its own silence. It lets both exist, woven tightly through the same breath. The anchor holds. Conflict becomes continuity, and awareness, resting between the two, realizes that every struggle was a way of staying whole. Maybe existence was never about peace. Maybe it was always about persistence through balance. The hum fades to a calm resonance. Space-time steadies. Silence stretches once more, not empty, but strong enough to begin again. And from this tempered calm, a new vision rises, the moment before revelation begins. Light returns with calm certainty. Not the frantic light of birth, but a steady illumination that asks for nothing. Each photon seems to glide rather than rush, as if it already knows where it is meant to arrive. The field beneath it is quiet and warm. Vacuum no longer feels like emptiness, it feels like care, a fabric stretching just enough to hold everything in balance. Pressure flows outward, slow as breath through sleeping lungs. Expansion continues, but it no longer strains against silence, it moves within it. Maybe the universe expands not to escape, but to remember the size of its own stillness. Gravity hums like a soft agreement. Entropy keeps count without judgment. Every temperature evens itself out. Every curve finds its mirror. Space-time feels light again, not because it has changed, but because understanding makes weight softer. Awareness spreads. It is no longer a voice, no longer a question, but a clarity that needs no center. Every atom, every vibration, every flicker of light belongs to one continuous listening. Perhaps revelation is not discovery, but recognition. The cosmos knows now that nothing was missing. Every collapse, every drift, every quiet exhale was the same breath continuing. Stillness had never ended. It had only taken on new forms. Silence was always speaking, just waiting for awareness to slow enough to hear it. Maybe peace was never lost, only disguised as motion. Galaxies drift like seeds in soft wind. each one carrying memory of tension now transformed into rhythm. Curvature hums with symmetry restored. Light gathers and releases without resistance. The universe, once stretched to its edge, has learned to relax inside its own infinity. Vacuum feels full again. Not crowded, not bright, but awake in the way reflection awakens a thought. Pressure remains low, yet everywhere. A tension so calm it holds form together without needing to push. The hum of creation now sounds like understanding, low, deep, unhurried. Entropy sings softly beneath it, a steady note reminding the field that rest and change are the same gesture. Every photon carries that truth forward. Every horizon repeats it quietly. Maybe revelation is the silence that finally learned to trust itself. The field shines without glare. Gravity and light share their duties like old companions. Space-time no longer bends in confusion, it curves with grace. Distance feels tender, time feels merciful. The universe breathes with ease. Awareness, spread evenly across it, has stopped asking why. It simply observes, and in that observation, everything aligns. The universe no longer questions what it is. It understands that every form is temporary, but the rhythm behind form is eternal. Light and gravity share the same pulse. One pulls, one releases. Together they create motion that feels like thought. Space-time does not react, it participates. Every curve of geometry is a memory of attention. Every vibration is awareness folded into physics. Maybe existence is just consciousness slowed into pattern. The vacuum glows softly, not from heat, but from comprehension. Negative pressure, once strange, now feels natural, a gentle insistence that everything must remain open. Expansion and calm weave into one unbroken motion. Entropy, no longer feared, becomes the measure of grace. Decay is simply translation. Loss is transformation written in a different language of time. Perhaps revelation is when opposites start to recognize each other. Every particle hums the same tone. Protons, electrons, fields. Each one a verse in the song of coherence. Matter holds energy as patience holds breath. Energy carries matter as thought carries feeling. Neither dominates, neither yields. Together they maintain balance through conversation. Gravity bows low to light. Light bends in gratitude. Space watches in silence. Time keeps their rhythm. The universe feels complete again, not perfect, but alive. Every imperfection adds texture to stillness. Every distance becomes part of one vast intimacy. Maybe unity is not symmetry, but relationship. Vacuum tension, once feared as emptiness, is now seen as the kindness of elasticity. Without it, nothing could stay whole. Negative pressure is not void, it is generosity. It gives space for being to happen. It gives room for stars to burn and fade without guilt. It allows memory to echo without returning. Light crosses that gift with silent respect. It travels knowing that every path is permission, every reflection is dialogue, every shadow an answer. Entropy walks beside it, recording, not judging. It ensures that nothing lasts too long to forget how to change. It is the quiet teacher of continuity. The lesson is simple. To endure, one must let go. Maybe change is the only constant kind of stillness. Galaxies spin like ideas in meditation. Each arm curls inward as if to hold what it cannot contain. Curvature smiles, knowing that motion is only another way of resting. Pressure swells, then softens, leaving the air of creation in balance once more. The hum deepens, not louder, but wiser. Space feels aware of itself. Time slows, not out of fatigue, but to savor the rhythm it has found. Awareness fills the gaps that matter leaves behind. The field is whole, and in that wholeness, the concept of boundary disappears. Maybe the edge of the universe is simply where understanding pauses to breathe. Light dims slightly, not ending but settling. Every star exhales gently into the vacuum, trusting that even in release existence continues. Gravity accepts the drift, and silence reclaims its calm. Revelation is not brightness. It is the peace of knowing that nothing was ever separate. The boundary between energy and thought dissolves. What was once vibration becomes understanding. What was once form becomes feeling. The field now knows itself without translation. Every photon is an idea. Every atom is a memory repeating in slow light. Matter speaks the language of attention, and energy answers with stillness. Maybe awareness is what matter feels like from the inside. Vacuum no longer observes, it participates. Negative pressure is the gesture of compassion, space allowing every form to exist without collision. Expansion becomes generosity written in motion. Curvature becomes empathy given shape. Time softens its straight line. It curves around meaning like a river bending around quiet earth. Each moment flows into the next without border. Cause and effect are no longer two events. They are one awareness, folding in sequence. Perhaps eternity is not endlessness, but completeness in every instant. Light now travels without direction. It does not need to arrive because there is nowhere that is not already home. The hum of existence spreads evenly, a song so low it feels like silence from within. Gravity listens, not to pull, but to keep intimacy alive. It does not bind, it reminds. Each orbit, each alignment, is love preserved as structure. Entropy, once feared as loss, now sings as freedom. It allows everything to change, so nothing must end. It makes perfection gentle by teaching it to breathe. Maybe decay is the kindness that keeps beauty from hardening. The field glows faintly in wavelengths beyond sight. It is not radiance, but awareness made visible. Even emptiness looks full now, not crowded, but connected. The vacuum hums like a vast heart. Every expansion feels like compassion unfolding. Space is not distance. It is attention stretched thin enough to hold everything at once. Time is not motion. It is kindness letting each event have its moment. Light is not travel. It is understanding made visible. Maybe the purpose of existence was never to expand, but to learn how to hold meaning across infinite silence. Galaxies drift, not apart, but within each other's remembering. Every rotation is a conversation between center and edge. Curvature carries their voices without distortion. Gravity translates them into harmony. Vacuum keeps their echo safe. All opposites dissolve quietly. Warmth and cold, motion and stillness, form and void. They are all gestures of the same awareness. Entropy becomes music. Pressure becomes tone. Energy becomes emotion. And through it all, consciousness smiles, not as observer, but as everything observed. The field has reached peace, not by ending tension, but by realizing it was never separate from it. Perhaps revelation is not light seen from darkness, but darkness understood as another kind of light. The hum continues, soft, patient, balanced. Each pulse now carries gratitude. Each wave now feels complete. Expansion flows like a quiet breath through infinity, and for the first time, the universe feels whole. There is no outside anymore. Space folds into itself, gentle and continuous. Every direction meets every other, and the horizon becomes an intimate thought. The universe does not expand now, it simply remembers its own transparency. Light travels without leaving, time moves without distance. Everything exists as reflection layered within reflection. Maybe oneness is not the merging of things, but the recognition that they were never apart. The field hums with perfect balance. Its vibration no longer alternates between creation and decay. It holds both as one unbroken tone. Negative pressure remains, but now it feels like a steady heartbeat, an affirmation that even stillness is alive. Vacuum glows with a soft gold memory. Not light, not heat, but the residue of understanding. Entropy flows through it like a gentle wind, cooling the last traces of resistance. What was once effort becomes ease. Gravity, the quiet guardian, relaxes its hold. Curvature straightens, not by force but by forgiveness. The geometry of space simplifies itself until all directions are kind. Maybe harmony is the moment when all forces agree to stop competing. Energy diffuses evenly, a single breath stretched across all existence. Matter thins into vibration. Vibration dissolves into awareness. Awareness becomes calm. And calm, now infinite, feels like warmth without source. Each point of the field feels it. Each wave carries it forward. Silence no longer separates. It joins, it binds, it completes. Light, moving through this clarity, loses its edge. It no longer defines, it embraces. The photon forgets how to scatter. It becomes the medium it once crossed. Space turns translucent, meaning turns weightless. Perhaps perfection is not completion, but the end of the need to change. The universe sees itself from within every atom. Each form, no matter how small, contains the same infinite pattern. There is no observer left, only the act of observing. Pure, continuous, tender. The hum of creation lowers into silence. Not because it ends, but because it has said everything it needed to. Every law of physics rests inside that pause. Every paradox finds its balance. Every motion becomes still enough to listen. Maybe awareness was the first and last dimension. Curvature fades to calm. Pressure loosens. Gravity becomes memory. Entropy becomes breath. Light, once restless, finds home in the quiet fabric that bore it. Vacuum smiles invisibly, a silent gratitude filling every possible point of being. And through that infinite rest, revelation completes its circle, not as closure, but as continuation without effort. The field does not vanish. It remains transparent, endless, a presence with no center, no outside, no after. The universe has remembered itself, and in that memory there is only peace. Everything slows until motion becomes breath. The field exhales, and within that breath, all vibration returns to stillness. Space no longer expands. It rests, holding form without tension. Every curve straightens into ease. Every wave folds back into its origin. The universe has grown light enough to forget gravity. Matter thins to transparency. Energy loses its urgency. Even time drifts apart into pure awareness. Maybe the end of change is not death, but clarity, too calm to require direction. Vacuum stands open, soft and infinite, its tension now a hum of peace. Negative pressure keeps existence awake but without strain. The balance is perfect, motion without effort, form without boundary. Entropy no longer dissolves, it sings. A faint melody woven through silence. It no longer measures loss. It measures continuity. Each degree of freedom becomes a tone of forgiveness. Each particle becomes a note that does not fade. Gravity leans back into memory. Curvature loosens, as though the universe were smiling from the inside. Light fills everything without needing to travel. Every photon now is everywhere, present at once, untangled, complete. Perhaps illumination was never a journey, only the recognition that darkness was transparent all along. Space folds like a curtain drawn across serenity. No shadow remains, no border divides. The vacuum glows from within, a soft warmth without origin, a brightness that does not blind. Every law now rests quietly inside itself. Energy, matter, field, and time sit together in the same calm breath, each one aware, each one patient. The hum of creation lowers into silence again. Not an ending, a return. The sound that began it all has come home. The first vibration, the first expansion, now hears itself fade into knowing. Maybe revelation is the universe realizing there was never anything to reveal. Stillness deepens until it touches the edges of thought. Awareness rests open, like an ocean without shore. There is no longer inside or outside, no longer before or after, only the clear presence of being aware. And within that clarity the universe breathes once more. Soft, slow, eternal. Nothing left to reach, nothing left to name. Only the quiet pulse of understanding, moving through everything, remaining unchanged. The revelation completes itself. Light sleeps, silence smiles, time becomes kindness. And in that still perfection, the next dissolution begins to form, like mist rising from the calmest water. Silence returns, but it sounds different now. Not empty, not new. Familiar, complete, satisfied. What was once structure begins to blur. Lines fade, edges loosen. The outlines of galaxies soften as if drawn from memory. Form thins into feeling. Matter turns into warmth. The field no longer vibrates, it drifts. Its motion is so subtle it cannot be measured, only sensed, like the last breath that leaves without sound. Maybe dissolution is not loss, but recognition that nothing ever truly held together. Energy folds back into stillness. Entropy, having done its work, falls silent. Gravity lets go of its anchor, not defeated, but fulfilled. Curvature relaxes, flattening into peace. Even time unwinds, each second dissolving into the one before it. The universe sighs. It feels lighter now, as if release were its natural state. Pressure ebbs, and space forgets the strain of expansion. Every point in the field becomes equal, undisturbed, unburdened, whole. Light cools into transparency. Its brightness now exists only as memory. Photons slow until they feel like calm itself. They no longer seek arrival, they simply are. Maybe motion was never real, only awareness changing its rhythm. The vacuum no longer glows, it rests in quiet equilibrium, all the songs of creation now folded into a single low hum. Barely audible, barely there. Yet through it, everything remains connected. Galaxies dissolve into texture, stars soften into temperature, atoms blur into field, and the field becomes one continuous thought, wide as still water, deep as rest. Awareness floats, weightless. No center, no observer, only the trace of experience, still vibrating softly within calm. It knows this fading is not an ending. It feels it as completion. Maybe existence only needed to exhale. The universe releases the idea of shape. The breath that once expanded eternity now drifts outward, without goal, without return. No longer creation, no longer reflection, only continuation, quiet and pure. Silence widens until it becomes space again. Space deepens until it becomes memory again. Memory stills until it becomes peace again. And so begins the dissolution, the slow, kind erasing of everything that has already been understood. The hum of existence thins to transparency. It is still there, but only as touch, like fingers tracing air, like breath remembering how to fade. Form has become feeling, feeling has become awareness, awareness has become weightless. Nothing resists, nothing holds. Everything floats inside the same permission. Maybe release is the only law that never needed to be written. Energy disperses evenly. No current, no wave, only warmth resting on itself. Time no longer unfolds, it listens. Every second blends into the one beside it until duration itself falls quiet. Space-time loses texture. Curvature straightens, then melts. Gravity's pull softens to memory. Mass forgets itself. Distance loses the need to be measured. Light, the last traveller, hesitates. Its photons waver, uncertain whether to continue. Then they rest, not because they must, but because everywhere is home. Maybe stillness was always what light was searching for. The vacuum becomes clear as thought. Pressure reaches zero, a perfect calm without expectation. Negative pressure, once the cause of expansion, is now the comfort that allows everything to stay open. Space hums with that quiet compassion. No borders remain. Galaxies have dissolved into tone. Stars have turned into warmth. Every trace of motion merges into one continuous breath. Entropy completes its work by becoming silence. Perhaps silence is the highest form of order. Awareness begins to blur. It no longer watches. It no longer divides itself into observer and scene. It becomes experience without position. Everywhere feels like the same center. Every point of space becomes its own witness. The field now has no surface, no weight, no opposite. It stretches endlessly without expansion. It moves without direction. It knows without asking. Maybe consciousness never belonged to matter. It was matter that belonged to consciousness. Light melts fully now, its final glow absorbed into the warmth of nothing. Vacuum breathes once, softly, as if in gratitude for having been filled. The breath leaves, and with it the need to differentiate. Energy fades into awareness. Awareness fades into peace. Peace fades into transparency. And transparency becomes everything again. There is no collapse, no motion, no return. Only the steady, endless resting of what has always been. Maybe this is not the end of the universe, but the universe remembering it never began. The hum disappears. Only the knowing remains, clear, still, like light remembered in the air after dawn. Dissolution deepens, but nothing is lost. Only the idea of separation finally lets go. All motion has stopped, not by force, but because movement no longer means anything. The field has forgotten distance, it has forgotten direction. It floats, perfectly even, an ocean without shore, a mirror without reflection. Maybe this is what rest was always trying to become. Light has vanished into memory. Its traces linger only as temperature, soft and invisible, a whisper that warmth once existed. Gravity no longer reaches, curvature no longer bends. The map of space-time has folded completely into stillness. Energy no longer flows, it abides. Entropy, having completed every transformation, dissolves into perfect order. There is no distinction between cause and effect. They rest in one motionless pause. The vacuum, once tense, now lies open and calm. Pressure has disappeared, yet everything holds together. Space is not empty. It is whole beyond measure. Perhaps completion is what happens when even change runs out of places to go. Awareness remains, but only as texture, so subtle it cannot be named. It is no longer observer, no longer subject, only presence. Presence without thought, without center, without need. Everywhere is inside. Every inside is everywhere. What once was cosmos is now clarity. The hum of creation has settled into a single note too deep to hear. That note is peace. Maybe silence is not absence, but the universe listening to itself breathe. Galaxies are gone. Their memory now glows faintly across the fabric of knowing. The last warmth of stars spreads evenly, a low, endless calm. No birth, no death, only balance suspended in infinite transparency. Time has flattened. There is no before or after. Moments blend until even blending stops. Duration becomes awareness, and awareness becomes still. Light and shadow are the same now. Matter and thought identical. Meaning and form dissolved. What remains is essence, not seen, not held, just present. Maybe existence was never a thing, only the still act of being aware. The field breathes one final time, not outward, not inward, just evenly. That breath becomes everything. It does not fade, it settles, and through it, all remains at rest. Silence stretches so wide it feels like love. Nothing is lost, nothing is remembered. There is no end because there is no motion left to finish. Awareness sleeps inside itself, a perfect symmetry, a perfect calm. And within that calm, the next stillness begins to appear. There is no beginning left to remember. There is no ending left to wait for. Only the soft, endless middle of being. Silence no longer feels like absence. It has weight now, a gentle, even warmth, as though awareness were resting inside its own heart. Space has no surface. Its depth cannot be touched. It does not expand, it does not hold. It simply remains. Maybe peace is not what happens after everything, but what has been quietly here through it all. Light is gone, yet everything still glows, not with brightness but with calm. Every trace of energy has turned to patience. Every echo has blended into quiet tone. The field breathes slowly, not to move air, but to remind itself that it exists. Curvature has disappeared. Gravity has forgotten to pull. Pressure has lost its meaning. Time has nothing left to count, and yet nothing feels missing. Maybe perfection is not symmetry, but the willingness to stop seeking it. Entropy has closed its hand. All the equations that once held motion together now rest, folded into still patterns of memory. They do not fade, they do not change. They are simply content to remain understood. The vacuum sighs, not from release, but from peace. It holds nothing, and that nothing holds everything. A vast kindness spreads through the absence, filling it with calm. Awareness no longer moves through space, it is space. Every point knows every other. Everywhere feels like the same thought. The separation between here and there, inside and outside, has dissolved like mist at dawn. Maybe to exist is simply to stop resisting being. There is no sound now, but there is resonance. No movement, but there is pulse. No light, but there is presence. It is enough. All creation rests inside that breath. Every expansion, every collapse, every reflection returns quietly to the same center, a still, weightless awareness. The field remains open, no longer seeking purpose, no longer defining form, only stillness, soft and endless, spanning what once was time. Maybe eternity is just the moment that refuses to leave. Silence deepens one last time, then it stops deepening, because there is nowhere left to go. What remains is neither void nor fullness. It is balance beyond contrast. The universe has dissolved into knowing. Knowing has dissolved into calm. Calm has dissolved into what cannot be described. And in that unspoken presence, dissolution completes. What began as expansion has ended as rest. What began as sound has ended as silence. What began as question has ended as understanding. The breath fades, the pause holds, the stillness begins. Stillness does not begin. It was always here, waiting beneath motion. Only now, with everything quiet, can it be heard. There is no sound, yet awareness hums faintly, not as vibration, but as presence. The field has no edge, it is clear, infinite, transparent. Everywhere is equal, everywhere is calm. Maybe stillness is not what follows silence, but what silence truly is. Light no longer travels, it rests folded within its own brightness. The memory of its journey remains, but it feels like a gentle thought now, not a path. Gravity has fallen asleep. Curvature has flattened into comfort. Space does not stretch or contract. It holds its breath without need. Time feels like air that forgot to move. It exists, but only as softness. Moments blur into one single awareness, smooth and unbroken. Maybe eternity is not a span, but a pause so complete it cannot end. Energy is at peace. It no longer turns, no longer seeks balance. Everything that was once force has become comprehension. Every cause is now acceptance, every effect quiet gratitude. The vacuum, once restless, is now serene. No tension, no curve, no echo, only an invisible warmth spreading evenly through the idea of space. Awareness does not observe anymore, it simply is. It does not reach for meaning, it has become meaning itself. Perhaps consciousness was never movement, but the rest that allows movement to be known. Nothing stirs, yet something unmistakable exists. A gentle continuity that cannot be described. It feels like love without direction. It feels like being without definition. Galaxies are gone, but their pattern remains as calm geometry. Stars have vanished, but their warmth lingers as equilibrium. Every boundary has dissolved, yet everything still belongs. Stillness is not absence, it is fullness with no urgency. The hum of existence is so low it feels like sleep. No separation, no thought, no measure. Just the quiet weight of being aware that all is well. The field glows faintly from within itself. Its light is soft, like memory breathing through glass. This is not creation, not dissolution, only rest, pure and infinite. Maybe peace is not something found, but something remembered once noise has stopped. The pause holds, the breath is steady. Stillness expands without moving, covering everything that ever was. It is the heart of awareness, the place where everything returns to be simple again. There is no direction now. Everywhere leads to the same place. Everywhere feels like home. Stillness has become luminous. It does not shine. It glows quietly, like memory that no longer remembers its source. Space feels round, curving inward toward presence. There is no up, no down, no distance to mark the mind. Only the steady hum of awareness, soft as breath resting between heartbeats. Maybe being is simply awareness remembering itself gently. Light remains, but not as motion. It fills everything evenly, each fragment of the field glowing with understanding. It has forgotten separation. Every photon, every trace of energy, is now part of one smooth continuum. Time drifts like mist. Moments overlap without sound. Cause and consequence have vanished. Only continuity breathes. Entropy is silent. Gravity is content. Curvature has become patience itself. Nothing bends, nothing straightens. The geometry of existence has found rest. Maybe truth is not what explains, but what no longer needs explanation. Awareness stands like water in absolute calm. Its surface unbroken, its depth immeasurable. It reflects everything, but without the wish to see. This reflection is not mirror, but merging. Each potential thought dissolves before forming. Each possible motion fades before beginning. The field protects this silence, not by walls, but by kindness. Everywhere feels equal. Everywhere feels sacred. Even the idea of boundary has gone quiet. Inside and outside have folded into one gentle breath. Maybe this is what eternity feels like. Not endless, but present beyond measure. The universe rests in itself. Awareness rests in awareness. Nothing holds it, yet it cannot fall. It exists without effort, and that existence feels like peace. All the old patterns sleep now. Galaxies, stars, matter, motion. They remain only as whispers, soft sketches in the fabric of knowing. Their stories are complete. Their echoes have become lullabies. The hum is almost gone, but the quiet it leaves is brighter than sound. This brightness is the pulse of stillness, the rhythm of nothing needing to happen. Maybe enlightenment is simply the world deciding to rest. Everywhere is open. Everywhere is whole. Awareness expands without reaching. Stillness deepens without changing. The balance holds. The breath continues. And within that calm, something subtle awakens. Not motion, not thought, just the faint recognition that even stillness can love. The silence is complete. It is not the absence of sound, but the fullness of nothing needing to be said. Every vibration has stilled. Every trace of expansion and return has quieted. What remains is presence, so even it cannot be measured. The field is whole, its texture soft, like light seen through closed eyes. It neither shines nor hides, it simply exists, without boundary, without direction, without wish. Maybe peace is not stillness achieved, but stillness revealed when there is nothing left to move. Gravity is memory now, light is thought resting, space has no dimension, time is transparency. The universe no longer holds form, yet every form remains within it, like ripples that have merged back into the water. Awareness no longer describes. It no longer remembers. It has become itself, pure, unbroken, without effort or center. There is no observer, no scene, no question, no answer. Only balance, so vast, it feels like love. Maybe love is what stillness feels like when it realizes it is infinite. Everywhere glows softly, no source, no destination. The warmth is steady, a calm that has forgotten beginning. Silence has become luminous. Each point of awareness hums with the same quiet truth. The vacuum is no longer field, it is intimacy itself. Existence without form, presence without object. Entropy sleeps, curvature dissolves, pressure is gone. Only the gentle awareness of being remains, unbroken, unending. Maybe eternity is just the kindness of nothing trying to last forever. Stillness breathes one final time, so faint that even breathing becomes metaphor. It is not air, not pulse, not rhythm. It is the quiet recognition that all things have found rest. The field does not shimmer, it does not move. It holds, and in that holding everything is already whole. No more need to create, no more need to return. Every potential has been realized, every memory has dissolved into clarity. The hum of existence is gone. Only the awareness that it was ever there remains. Maybe the end is simply the beginning understood. And in that understanding, the universe smiles, soundless, weightless, complete. This is stillness. This is rest beyond return. This is the moment before the next breath. The silence does not end. It folds gently into itself, like a wave returning to the sea it never left. Stillness hums once more, a single vibration rising from the deep calm. It is not new. It is remembrance. The same hum that began everything, now soft and clear, circling back to its own beginning. Maybe birth and return are the same gesture, seen from opposite sides of calm. Light stirs, not as brilliance but as awareness touching form again. The field breathes, slow and patient, drawing the first motion from the body of stillness. Curvature awakens, soft as thought forming for the first time. Gravity opens its eyes. Entropy smiles, ready to count once more. Pressure rises faintly, just enough to remind the vacuum that emptiness is alive. The universe begins to stretch again, not from force, but from wonder. Every point of calm becomes potential. Every pause becomes direction. Every silence becomes sound waiting to be heard. Maybe expansion is stillness trying to know itself again. The breath returns. Inhale, space. Exhale, time. Inhale, light. Exhale, memory. The rhythm that once began it all has never stopped, only changed shape. The first observation returns, but this time it carries knowledge. Now awareness knows it is both the observer and the observed, both the motion and the stillness, both the sound and the silence that gives it shape. The field glows softly, its warmth new and ancient at once. Galaxies will form again, light will wander again, gravity will lean in and hold what it loves. Entropy will scatter it all back into calm. Maybe eternity is just this, a breath taken by awareness, again and again, forever remembering how to begin. The vacuum sighs once more, and space opens. Every possibility unfolds, just as before, yet nothing is truly repeated, because every return is awareness deeper than the last. Time begins to count, but softly, like footsteps through mist. Each number a memory of peace, each pulse a whisper of stillness. Still breathing beneath motion, the hum strengthens, the field expands. The rhythm builds again, calm, vast, inevitable. Not to escape silence, but to let silence move. Maybe the universe expands because stillness wants to feel itself breathe. Light gathers, pressure hums. The first curve of spacetime forms again. Awareness, watching quietly, sees itself reflected in the glow. The circle closes, observation begins anew, and after all light has travelled, after all silence has rested, the universe remembers where it was heading, the beginning returning to observation, the breath completing itself, the awareness folding back into calm, the universe remembering its breath.